Okay. How's everybody doing? Of course, there's nobody here yet, but still, nonetheless, how's everybody doing? Tonight, we're going to make some gaitors. We made the pattern last time, and we're going to check to see cut them out of the red canvas, cotton canvas that I've got, and hopefully I'll see some people on the chat message. I'm really still trying to figure out where I'm supposed to see the messages here for the chat room. So bear with me while I walk around here a little bit. Okay. I apologize for the background here behind me with the bay window being so bright. It'll get dark here in a minute. So a couple things that should be fun to see tonight. Cutting, always good times. We'll run the serger. We'll see how loud that is. Get to see how I do curves on the serger. Although I'm not entirely sure if you'll be able to see that with the camera up here. We'll figure it out, I guess. This fabric needs to be ironed, of course. The last time I went to go buy an iron, because they do wear out, I asked my mom for some advice, as you do. And she said to buy an iron that was just steel on the bottom. where this surface didn't have any Teflon coating or anything anti-stick. No special coatings. Because if you happen to iron on fusible interfacing, for example, and it got stuck on the bottom of the iron, then you could just take some steel wool and scrub off the bottom of the iron and get it unstuck. Whereas if you tried to do that with a Teflon coating, you'd screw up the Teflon. Just in case you're in the market for an iron, that's the one piece of advice from my mom. All right, iron's hot. Going to town. I always like to iron my fabric before I cut it. You don't want to have a wrinkle mess up a seam line, something like that. Fabric lays straighter. I don't need to iron the whole piece because I'm only cutting a little piece off. So I'll just iron off what I need. And then I'll be back in camera here in no time. If you happen to be watching and you're in the chat room, let me know if you can hear me fine. Got a new microphone. Testing all this equipment out. It says I've got 3 viewers. Hello out there, viewers. Just ironing up some fabric before I get a pattern out to cut and make some gaiters. This fabric handily came pre-folded. We'll use that to my advantage. Let's see here. I like to get as much of the fabric supported by the table as I can. Reduces the amount of slipping that you get. As you can see here, I'm cutting 2 layers of fabric. I know that my pattern's not going to take up too much space, so I'm just going to fold the end up here so it's not sitting on the floor. And I want to make a left and a right gaiter. Now with this fabric, this particular fabric, I don't think the right and wrong side of the fabric are all that much different. It's a heavy weave, but that's something to be aware of if you're cutting pieces. That is that you might have some pieces that have you might have some fabric that has a pattern on an edge, and you'd want to watch out to make sure you're not cutting 2 left pieces when you want a left and a right. One way to kind of cheat and do that is you cut 2 layers at a time. Because you're cutting 2 layers at a time, you're automatically getting, if you're cutting it on a fold, you're automatically getting the sides that you need. So that takes care of that problem. All right, next tip. Oh yes, the direction of the fabric is important. You would not want to, for example, decide to cut this pattern piece in this direction, because the grain of the pattern, this line right here, you want it to go with the the weaving of the fabric itself. You don't want to go and cut on a diagonal, because what will end up happening is the fabric will stretch unevenly. And then when you piece your pieces together, you'll find that some of the pieces, when they sew together, they don't actually sew together all that nicely. Hey, look at this. That's some pretty good conservation of fabric going on here. Alright, so first I'm just going to cut this roughly to size. Give me something easier to work with. My nice Ginger, I think that's how it's pronounced, Ginger scissors here. Dressmaker's shears. They're sharp. If I were to run my finger down this blade, I would cut myself, and that would be bad. I've done that accidentally before, just handling them like this. They make easy work of this canvas. Alright, let me make sure that all of this is visible. See if anybody's online. Well, no viewers yet. But my stream rate is good. So I hope that this is still going. Yeah, it appears to still be going live. Alright, let's get to cutting. Now, some people will pin their pattern down to their fabric. I find that annoying, personally. So I don't do it. But that is one thing that you can do that might help you. I also have weights. These are filled with like ball bearings. On lighter fabrics or with the paper patterns that you buy from like Simplicity or McCall's, I find the weights to be very, very helpful in keeping the pattern from moving around, especially if there's a breeze of any variety, because those patterns are really, really thin paper. But with this, where I've cut a muslin, which is a fabric pattern, it holds itself to the original, to the fabric nicely enough that I find with careful practice, I don't need to pin my pattern pieces to my fabric. Cutting, as always, is my least favorite part of sewing, but it is a necessary evil. Because if you don't cut your fabric, you don't ever get to sew your fabric. My general approach, I guess, when I cut is I like to cut along one edge to separate my pattern into basic chunks, I guess, and then work on the details, because I try to conserve fabric where I can. And then, I don't know, I guess I just develop a rhythm for how I cut my curves and whatnot. One thing you may notice is I try to make long cuts with the scissors. I've found, for me at least, that fewer long cuts make for straighter, more consistent edges, especially if you have nice, sharp scissors that fit your hand nicely. These, my hands are pretty big. These scissors fit me very well, but I have other scissors that are smaller and they make it actually much harder to cut for me. Now on curves, they're obviously moving the scissors as you cut, and that takes practice. But you can still get long scissor strokes even though you're cutting curves if you're used to moving the bottom end of the scissors around. Okay. We've cut the inside and one part of the outside. Here's the other part of the outside. Go ahead and just cut this end off. Okay. And again, these are going to be gaitors. These are worn over the lower leg and the boot. They're taken from a colonial pattern that I found online and made last week. Made the pattern just by drawing it onto the muslin. And these are going to go underneath your boot, cover the top of your foot a little bit and come up just below the knee. And it's designed, gaiters are designed to protect your lower legs and pants, especially the tops of your shoes. If you're out in the woods, walking around, actually be really good tick protection. Because it closes in around your leg. And so if you look at this pattern piece, you can roughly see that it's calf shaped or boot shaped. Okay, so that's it for the cutting. We've got two inner pieces because we cut on the fold, so two outer back pieces and two outer front pieces. And if we sew all those together, we should have a gaiter. Okay, it says we've got 3 viewers now. Who knows? Let's check to see if anybody's liked my post on Facebook. Charles has. Maybe Charles is watching. If you are, hello, Charles. All right, let's see here. I don't know if anybody's going to be able to see this very well. This machine right here with the 4 spindles of thread is a serger. I've named all my sewing machines, so of course we named the serger Sergio. Sergio is voiced by Antonio Banderas and likes Spanish guitar. You also need to use tweezers to thread Sergio. Takes 4 threads to run a serger. Well, you can do 2 or 3. This one uses 4. And with certain modes of stitching, I will use 3 if I want to do like a rolled hem. Rarely do I use 2. I've had this serger for a while now, and I just learned that I can move the foot out of the way to make it easier to thread. Read your manuals, folks. If you think you know everything about your machine, go and read your manual again. Because chances are you probably missed something. Alright. Now, if you've got 4 threads, it also means you have 4 tensioning knobs. And if you're threading a serger, it is very, very important that the foot is raised. Because if the foot is not raised, the thread will not get into the tensioner properly, and your tension will be all messed up. And when your tension is all messed up, serger don't work so well. Okay, those first 2 threads that you saw, those went to the needles. This one goes to the, I believe it is the upper looper. I'll do a show sometime where I'll give you a behind the scenes view of threading the serger so you can see it up close and personal. Or maybe I'll just take an extra video of me doing that and clip that into this, because it's an interesting process and it does take practice. Why do I have a serger? I have a serger because what it does is it protects the edge of the fabric from fraying, and it makes your garments last longer. And if I'm going to spend the time to make something by hand, and yes, this qualifies as handmade, I want it to last a long time. Okay, let's see how loud Sergio is for you guys. Alright, need to get my smaller scissors for this. Okay, so Sergio has been threaded. Ooh, 5 viewers now. Hello, new 5 viewers. If you would be so kind to say something in the chat, that would be great. I think that I'm looking at the right chat room. I don't really know. Oh, hello. Cassie is watching. How's your back doing, Cassie? Also, if you could, how's the sound? Can you hear me when I'm walking around the room properly? And let me know if the serger is far too loud for the microphone or whatnot. I'm glad to hear your back is better. All right, so on to the serging. This is where things can get a little bit boring. But luckily these pieces are small. The nice thing about Sergio, it's actually pretty fast. Trash bin in. Sergio cuts while it sews. That means sometimes you have things that need to be caught in the trash bin. always like to trim my extra strings as I go along. I didn't for a while, but then I found they really got in the way. A little quiet overall. I might be able to adjust that. Is that a better volume? So let's see if you can see this detail here. I should have done it in a contrasting thread color. So that's what the serger does to the edge of the fabric. Puts multiple threads over the edge there, and it keeps it from fraying. So let's go on to the next one. Two down. If anybody's got any questions about what I'm doing, questions about other things, when I'm done with this piece, I'll get back up, check the chat room, see what I can answer. Then I think I'm going to stop and take a quick break and get a drink. What's the model of Sergio? It's a Bernina 1100D. I will type that into chat. All right, I will step away for a brief moment, get a drink of water, and be right back. And I'm back with water. Two more pieces of serge. As I said before, this is the inner part of the leg for the Gaitor. A lot of curves. You might notice when I'm surging that I go really fast on the straightaways and I slow down on the curves. Helps for control. Anybody who's never used a serge before, they can be scary. I mean, there's this knife here that's right by your finger that can cut through the fabric, cut through your finger. Good curve. It can be hard to steer while sewing on Sergio because you've got two needles. You've got that blade in there, which is going up and down, which is about full finger's width distance from the needles. So you kind of have to navigate around a bigger pivot point, if you will. And yes, it does mean that you're basically sewing all of your seams twice. But I'd rather sew them twice, once with the serger and once with Sophie here or Edna over there, than have to repair a garment that falls apart because of use in the field. Or worse yet, have something fall apart in the wash. I made a really awesome skirt one time for Rebecca before I had the serger, and we washed it before she even got to wear it more than once. And it completely disintegrated. It was pretty heartbreaking. It was pretty early on in my garment making career, and I learned from that lesson and moved on and got Sergio. Alright, and serging is done. Yay! Thank you, Sergio. I'd say take a bow, but you're a sewing machine. This room doesn't have very good power plugs, so I operate off of extension cords. So guys, this is Sophie. Say hello to Sophie. She's a Singer sewing machine. When I bought Sophie, it was because Edna, who's sitting over on the other table and you probably can't see right now, was being used a lot for embroidery machine work. And I didn't want to have to keep switching in and out of embroidery machine mode. So I went and did some research and found that the Singer Curvy model, which Sophie is, I don't see any numbers on it. Anyway, Sophie was built in the same factory as Edna, the embroidery machine, and as a result, I could use the same bobbins, same foot accessories if I wanted to do that, and I had a lot of the same stitches. So it would be really convenient for me to not have two completely different types of threading mechanisms, for example. All right. Before we get crazy and start sewing, I want to organize this project into its component parts and make sure I don't sew two right gaiters or two left gaiters. So we'll start by organizing it into how it's going to be sewed together. Just by laying it out and making sure that I have a left and a right. And that's easily done, as you probably know. Just like that, left and a right. Who likes to pin? I don't like to pin. I have clips. These came in a package of like 50. Let's see here. Here we go. And they're little clips made for sewing. They open and close. And you can't really stab yourself with them. So, less bleeding. Yay! Let's see. Sophie needs to get some appropriately colored thread. Yes. Not pre-round, but the pre-round by me multicolored bobbin collection. Talk about a time saver. Before I used to have like 2 bobbins, and so I either needed to use it up until the color was gone, or I would unwind it and waste a lot of thread. So I went out and bought like 2 15 packs of bobbins or something like that. They were pretty cheap, ultimately. And then every time I had a project, I would widen a bobbin. And then lo and behold, eventually I had a collection of bobbins in the colors I used most frequently. And then one time I was at Joann's, and they had a thread caddy of doom. I should put a logo on top of this so that the top-down view has a cool shot of it at some point. All right. Nothing like home shopping for thread. That'll work. It's not the same bobbin. Close enough. Now the threading on Sophie and Edna is pretty easy. It's straight down around this little doohickey and through the needle. Well, I've actually got my new walking foot installed here on Sophie. Haven't really played with it yet. And Sophie does have an automatic threader thing that's supposed to make it easier, but it hasn't really been working lately. I'll try it real quick. Oh, it worked. Yay. Okay. All right. So let's see. Probably don't even really need to clip, but maybe a couple of clips. Just to show you how they work. And gotta have my scissors. Now when I start this here, I'm going to do 1/2 inch seam allowance. That's what this pattern called for. Get my foot pedal in place here. I always backstitch to lock it in. Sophie's a computerized sewing machine. It does a couple things for you because it's computerized. The main one of which is whenever you stop sewing, it automatically raises the needle. If you have a completely mechanical sewing machine and you're sewing and you stop, the needle might be in any position. It might be up, it might be down, it might be in your fabric. And with the computerized ones, at least with Sophie, it automatically raises the needle, which is great if what you're doing is making a stitch, then moving to another part and making a stitch. And one time it's a downsize is if you're turning a 90-degree corner. Right. Because if I'm turning a 90-degree corner, what I want to do is leave the needle in the fabric, raise the foot, rotate it, lower the foot. It's the only time I find the computerized one to be a little bit annoying. That and sometimes it doesn't start. The other thing that the computerized sewing machine will do is it will detect if your bobbin thread breaks and let you know instead of just letting you sew on into the void of not actually creating a stitch. So far I'm liking this walking foot. Not bad for a $20 add-on. There we go. That's one of those times where I was trying to sew and it just didn't start. Okay. Obviously there's some finishing stitches to be done here, but we've got a gaiter. theory, this should fit my leg. Let's just test it out real quick and see. I don't have a good camera angle for showing whether or not it fits my leg. Yeah, that looks pretty good. All right. Go ahead and do the basic construction of the other one. Here. It's pretty cool. Feel free to shout out any other questions you guys might have in the chat. I can actually see the chat from here most of the way. Or suggestions on ways I can improve the experience for you guys. Tried to get a second web camera on this computer. I don't know that it can handle it. Sorry, a second not fixed to the computer web camera. Right now I've got one hanging off the ceiling, as you guys have probably guessed, and the one that's on the computer itself, which unfortunately means it's pointed at a funny angle. Hopefully you guys can see enough of me and enough of the project. Alright, before I go on and sew anymore, I need to iron. I like to iron my seams flat and open so that when I go and sew across the seams, they don't clog up the machine, they don't cause things to shift funny or become too thick also, where you have multiple seams crossing. Any more questions? Says I've got 4 viewers right now. Hello, 4 viewers. One of them is probably me. I don't know. Still figuring this out. So let me get out the ironing board again. Not really a good way for me to show you guys the ironing board, I don't think. Maybe I can iron and stand where I can at least have you guys hear me. Yeah, not really a good way to show this. Oh well, let's just get to it. Pardon my lack of preparation on this. I don't know where my sleeve roll is, which I will need to press some of these seams open. If you guys have questions, they don't have to be sewing related. Now I have question anxiety. Well, how about this? Let me ask this question. Is this project interesting to you guys? I've never made gaiters before. I'm making these because I believe that for the LARP that we're planning to create, Lost Colonies, that this will be a very nice piece of costuming to go along. Think about it like a way to hide comfortable shoes, but still make them look period. Because you could put tennis shoes underneath gaiters, and frankly, nobody will know they're tennis shoes. So I'm kind of making these to have see how hard they are for me to make, first of all, so that I can make them for folks to have to increase atmosphere without expecting them to go out and buy expensive boots. Now that I don't have my sleeve roll or a ham, this is going to be really difficult. I really need to find that. So, just for those of you who may have not ever ironed a seam flat open, here's what an unironed seam looks like. It's big and kind of bulky and sticks up like a fin. Here's what an ironed flat seam looks like. I really need to get a better camera here. That's what I mean by ironed open, as opposed to not. Hooray, atmosphere! This is why you should never actually clean your sewing room. Not that this is terribly clean. But I cleaned parts of it, now I can't find things. Yay, atmosphere! As best we can with what we've got. Yes, never clean your sewing room. Even if it means eventually you get killed by a giant pile of fabric. Yes, even if it means you can eventually get killed by a giant pile of fabric. All right. Well, that one sort of got ironed. I almost feel like I should have music on. What would you guys think if there was music in the background? Would it distract too much? We all know that they who dies with the most fabric wins, right? Ah. If you ever want to see a lot of fabric, go to New York City, go to the garment district, walk up and down, go into every store for hours on end. The first time I went, it was astounding to me. There was just an endless 2-block radius of New York City block sizes of fabric. And I don't think any of the stores had the same fabric. They all had different fabric. I didn't know that much fabric existed. My brain went into mental shutdown mode, actually. Very fascinating. Audio test, huh? Yeah, definitely would need an audio test. Yeah, we're not going to do it tonight, I don't think. All right, so we've got the basic shape of the gator, and I've ironed the seams well enough that I can continue sewing. So I will turn off the iron and get back to sewing. Always unplug your iron so you don't set things on fire. I think it's a particular curse of Larpers that we actually end up ironing all of our garb, but we never iron the actual clothes we wear to work, for example. At least I don't. I wore this to work today. A shirt that says henchman. Okay, so now I'm going to finish the top and bottom edges and the inside edges of this to hide those serger threads. If you didn't serge and you wanted to do this, you might end up rolling over your hem twice. With this particular fabric, that would be a pretty decent bulkiness. Some people, I probably could have ironed over this edge as well. I'm going to cheat and use clips. Cassie, who's making these comments here, has sewn quite a bit of stuff. And I have a question for Cassie. How long did it take you to figure out exactly what your seam allowance was in inches? Like your 5/8 or 1/2 inch seam allowance, to just know what that distance was by eyeball. It doesn't matter. You can go up to any object and you can measure it by its seam allowance. Well, that's 6 seam allowances. You mean 3 inches? Yeah, well, whatever. At some point, I just figured out that I knew how much was 5/8 of an inch or 1/2 an inch. Just by feel. As with all things, practice, practice, practice. Ooh. This one's going to be tough on me here. that'll be fine, but it's going to be awkward. Sometimes when you sew things that are curved and you go to fold over the edge to do the finishing, find that things don't line up as you want. And that means that sometimes you have to think three-dimensionally. So as I am sewing this, it's not going to lay flat on the sewing machine. You can see already here that it's got a curve built into it by the nature of the stitching pattern. I need some more water. Does the top-down view work for you guys on the sewing machine? Okay. Finish the top edge there. Looks pretty good. Move on to the next edge. Says still 4 viewers. You guys are hanging in there with me, huh? What time is it? 9 o'clock. Yeah, we're getting close to my quitting time here. I'd be very happy to hear about what you guys think about the quality of tonight's production stream thing. Hear any suggestions you might have for changing up the camera angle or the audio or what I could show better, whether or not I should tell bad jokes. Can you guys even see what I'm doing here when I'm pinning? I say pinning, but I'm using clips because less blood. It's the #1 rule of sewing. Don't bleed on the fabric. It's different than the #1 rule of Fight Club. Because we like to talk about sewing. All right, that was complicated little pinup job there. Let's get the seam sewn. I think then we're going to call it a night. Always slow down on the curve. It's like driving a car. Okay, maybe not just like driving a car, but you do have a gas pedal. You have to slow down on the curves. And it does take practice. All right. Now's the time when I should go and say, here's one I've completed for you already, and pull one out of the oven, but I haven't completed one yet. So instead, I will just fold this open here and show you what it looks like from the side here. And I will probably finish up the rest of these seams off camera. No real need for you guys to see that. And then next week I can work on buttonholes. And for that, I think I will definitely reposition the camera, because it won't be all that interesting to see buttonholes made from overhead. So I'll try to get an angle of the sewing machine here, over my shoulder or something for that next week. Yeah, I think they're coming out pretty nicely. So thank you all for tuning in. If you have any more questions, or comments, happy to chat for another minute. Just to give you an idea of what my goal is with these, I plan to take these live sessions. I'm also recording them to my hard drive, and eventually come back in and maybe film some smaller snippets direct up with my cell phone to get some more detail kind of views, and then stitch this video plus the close-up videos or still images together into a short YouTube tutorial, and then record completely new audio for the tutorial, so that's something maybe 10-15 minutes long with not quite as much me just sitting here sewing, whatnot, so that then I can put that up onto YouTube and people can use it as a tutorial to follow, to make stuff or get inspiration or whatnot. So after the Gaitors are done, I'll need another project. Again, focused on LARP items. It can be something small or something really obscenely complicated. For example, I'm going to be making a coat for myself. I can find the pattern for that and show you real quick what that's going to be. (1750s) military coat. Ooh, get that in the camera view there. So many buttons. So that will be a thing eventually as well. I don't know that I'm going to want to live stream all of that, but you never know. I might. because hey, this is a crazy new adventure. So anyway, thank you all for tuning in, and I'm going to try to do this weekly, so stay tuned. Have a good night.